Chapter 30, Journal Entries, 1993. From this point on, what I will be sharing is excerpts from my journals, of which I have kept. After remembering the experience surrounding my brother, Roy's, death, and having been left with the impression to begin to remember more by the hypnotherapist, I started recalling ongoing encounters. I hope the audience can appreciate having a unique insight into what it is like to be an abductee, for the good and the bad of it. Jan 20, 1993. I called Mother to tell her about my dream of meeting Roy. She said, "Before you go any further, let me tell you my dream that I had over a week ago." As she spoke, I lay on the bed and took notes. I'm in a room with other people. I can't see them, but I feel their presence. All I see is this short person standing facing me, and we are staring into each other's eyes. It's a different type of person standing there than, say, you or Christine or somebody. I feel that it's a female because the genital area looks female type down there. She has no clothes on, but there are no breasts. What stands out is her strange eyes and a round face. We stared right into each other's eyes, but I thought that I was in control of her, so it didn't scare me. It's like I was in charge of what was being said. It was weird. She was not like a regular woman. The main thing that stood out was the eyes. She had the strangest hypnotic eyes. She had large, round, hypnotic-looking eyes, like big pupils, dark eyes. I was saying something to that person, like scolding them and staring them down. Usually my dreams mean something, so I woke up wondering why I had such a strange dream. She felt she had been defending one of her children, saying something like, "You have no right to do that," or "You cannot and will not do that." I thought her dream was worth noting in my log, since it is obvious she had an alien encounter, possibly related to the mass abduction because the timing would have fit. January 26, 1993. Woke late and found blood in my right nostril and a lot of pain, swelling under the right eye. Placed sample of bloody tissue in a sealed container. With a sample in tow, I went to my family doctor. He found a hole in my nasal cavity and offered to burn it with a chemical to stop the bleeding, but I balked at the thought of someone sticking something up my nose again. Going out on a limb, I confessed to him that I was an alien abductee. His look was of disbelief as he kicked off backward in his rolling stool to the center of the room. But graciously, he wrote a description of the injury, which I gave to the investigator later that night along with my sample. The nose bled slightly for 3 days and was painful for 4 more days. The investigator arranged for me to drop off my tissue sample at a lab. I was to go to the front desk window, hand over the sample, and mention his name. Nothing else, no paperwork, and just leave. The results showed only that the sample would have come from someone's nose. Ha! February 2, 1993. Have sold our house and moved into an apartment. Awaken at 3:20 a.m. I didn't want to get up to go to the bathroom, was afraid I would be abducted but couldn't go back to sleep unless I went. I checked the clock so I'd know if I missed the time. Got back okay. The next thing I knew, a blue light was shining through the window trying to pull me out of bed. I fought it and started saying in my mind, "Praise be to the Father, praise be to the Father," in an attempt to break this spell. I felt that I had been able to raise my arms in the air, but I am not sure because I was paralyzed. Unable to move or make a sound, I started trying to call my husband's name. In my mind I am saying, "Turn on the light, turn on the light," trying harder and harder each time, until finally it came out. Time was now 4:10, an hour was missing. February 11, 1993. Being unaware of Betty Andreasson's story in The Watchers, I brought her book home from a local library and tossed it, with others, onto my couch. Passing my clock on the kitchen counter, it read 2:20 p.m. I stood at the sink with a few dishes. When I turned again, my clock read 4:47 p.m., and the dishes were still in the sink. My hands were cold, and the backs of my arms and thighs were blotched red and cool. I thought, wow, where has the day gone? February 12, 1993. I carried the book, The Watchers, with me to work. So far, I had only glanced through it. On Wednesdays, I arrive at work at 11 a.m., so naturally, this put me out in the nomadic region of the parking lot. Getting out of my car, I noticed a helicopter hovering near a high-rise building not far off in the distance. It immediately began a beeline in my direction. Is this one of those black helicopters I'd heard about? My heart began racing. For some reason I imagined them shooting me down right there in the company parking lot. As the roar of the helicopter grew louder, a sense of fear overcame me. I quickly started crossing the lot, hardly aware of the book I still clutched in my hand. My steps were frantic, my pace just shy of a sprint. I dared not glance up more than once. That single glance revealed something shocking, an unmarked helicopter. It soared low overhead just as I reached the shelter of the covered walkway. I froze at the entrance, my mind scrambling to process what I'd just seen. Another employee stepped outside just as the helicopter hovered above us, its presence unnervingly still. Suddenly, I had a plan. I rushed into the building, entered the code into the computer room, and headed for the loading dock on the other side. Opening the door, I once again heard the thundering beast. The other employee was now crossing the street, craning his head upward. He looked back at me as this huge insect persisted to stalk the building that held its prey. My courage failed again as I imagined them taking me down if I stepped out onto the dock for another look. I had worked there 5.5 years and never experienced anything like it. February 19th, 1993. While at work, I found blood in the right nostril. Feeling that I could not have had an abduction again so soon, I ignored it. By evening, I remembered lying on a table with 2 aliens at the end to my right. They had just explained something to me very kindly, of which I can't remember. Then one asked, "Will you cooperate?" I answered, "Yes." They were pleased and relieved. It was like they needed my help with something that was for a good cause, or maybe they needed my permission to use me to continue their agenda. Later, I would feel that they only told me what I was expecting them to say. I know they can play games with your mind to manipulate you. They don't always tell the truth. I am not above their powers, so to speak. Troy has a distinct memory of being asked, "Will you help us?" But he isn't into aliens. He takes this request to be part of his spiritual destiny, and it distresses him because he doesn't know what he is supposed to be doing to rid the world of evil. He feels serious anger over the crimes and injustices, and it causes anything he desires to pursue in life to be cast in the light of pettiness. He suffers a great deal of melancholy and depression over it. March 9th, 1993. While on my way to Arkansas to visit Judy, I stopped by Mother's in Splendora, Texas. She told me that my half-sister had a dream 3 weeks earlier. In this dream, she saw me. There was a group of people in this room with us. She had said to me, "Jennifer, I didn't believe you before, but this time I came with you." Then a guy entered the room looking for someone by calling his name. It was important that he find this person, and was agitated because he was not there. No one seemed to know where he was, and my sister let it be known that she didn't know about him either, had never met the guy. The name called was that of our investigator responsible for triggering the mass abduction. This was another example of the beings checking on the extension of damage to their exposure related to the mass abduction of December 8, 92. Friends and relatives connected to victims of the Huphon mass abduction were being put through staged events as others reported the same phenomenon. Continued my trip and arrived in Arkansas. One morning while there, I awoke with a sore nose and recalled the hallway having glowed blue that night. Mine and Judy's bedrooms were side by side. When I got up, I went to Judy's room to sit with her. When she sat up and blew her nose, there was blood. "So, they got you too," I commented. She told me her dream of being kidnapped and driven to an old house far off in the woods. Inside was an old wrinkled woman that showed her 2 people who were naked and squatting in a large cage. She was supposed to look at them. The smaller was scared and hiding behind the other. She thinks it was a female hiding behind a male. They were looking up at her. The old woman was not going to allow Judy to leave. Judy began insisting that she needed to get back for work. Only with much resistance was she allowed to leave. Having been trained in hypnosis by the alien investigator, I attempted hypnosis on Judy. Without me telling her my experience, she recalled a blue light glowing in the hall and one alien standing at her doorway. His right hand was on the doorframe as if to steady himself. His left arm was up and bent at the elbow. He was looking right at her, which gave her an uneasy feeling. Further efforts to pursue the event were stymied by severe pain in her sinus each time I said the word relax. Unable to tolerate the pain, we had to stop. I believe this to have been programming on the alien's part to keep me from using hypnosis to investigate what happened. That day we both complained of motion sickness while driving, which is out of character for us, and I found myself attracted to strange men, which is out of character for me. I have an image of standing in an embrace with a man I do not know. Other human males and females are standing in such embraces as beings look on, coming up close to observe. Many times, not sometimes, an abductee will interpret an alien being's appearance as something familiar, their brain trying to make sense out of what they are seeing. This old woman would not have really been just an old woman. It would have been a wrinkled alien. It makes you wonder if old abandoned houses are being used during alien abductions. Mine and Judy's abduction had taken place simultaneously, yet we had different experiences, obviously taken to different places. I know of another abductee with vivid memories of an old house far off in the woods. Being obsessed, this abductee spent time in a compelling search. She felt she would know it when she saw it as she could describe it in detail. She did not know why this house haunted her, sick, having made no connection with it to her alien abductions. On another night in Arkansas, I was on the alien gurney and asked my captor, should we start a food storage? Being curious, he asked why. So my family would have food for survival, I said, giving my conceived impression of some dire future event. His simple offhanded answer was, that sounds like a good idea. His sincere yet half-hearted response would effectively take some of the wind out of my sails and urgency out of our plans. This was around 1993. This shows that questions can be asked, not about their agenda because they won't tell you, but about personal interests that would be weighing on your mind. Recall how one abductee kept asking why they are picking her up, and she was shown an underlined check mark that roughly meant the word chosen. Also recall how a post-hypnotic suggestion placed by an investigator, Daryl Sims, triggered the mass abduction event. I would not advise other investigators to try this. The results could be very unpredictable. This could even come back and bite the investigator. These beings don't play. There would also be a difference between how a non-abductee would be handled versus an abductee. With an abductee, permissions would have to be sought due to their involvement in programs and the overall agenda. On another night, I slept with my wedding ring on. It is a beautiful ring of genuine rubies and diamonds set in 22-karat gold. I had become semi-aware while on a gurney. The being took notice of my ring and knew that it was a gift from my spouse as a token of his love. Being intrigued, he turned to call someone's attention to it. This disturbed me because I had been afraid someone might want to take it from me due to its value. That's why I had slept with it on. When I awakened, the first thing I did was look at my ring, which was still on my finger. Judy's house sat alone, far off the red dirt road. That evening, it began to rain heavily, and was still raining when we retired just before midnight. We were lying quietly in our prospective rooms when within minutes 2 heavy-duty military helicopters flew low, straight over the house. The windows and walls shook violently. The sound was deafening as it passed. "What the heck was that?" I called from my room. "Military helicopters," Judy called back. "Didn't that scare you?" I wondered because it had me. "Yeah, it scared me," she confessed. "Do they always fly low over your house like that?" I asked. "No, but there is a military base not far from here," she said. "Well, why are they flying in the rain at midnight right over your house? Isn't that dangerous?" She hadn't a clue. They didn't return. It's strange because another abductee friend had predicted to my investigator that military helicopters would buzz us during my visit to Arkansas. How did she know? March 23, 93, I found 2 small needle marks on my right hip. This would begin repeated appearances of such needle marks. The first thought was that they were related to ovarian egg retrieval and/or fertilization. The true significance would not be known until December 1996, when almost 4 years later, I would have an unexpected hysterectomy. The aliens were helping me by repeatedly taking fluid from cysts on my ovaries. While some of these encounters with gray aliens might initially seem ordinary, like extracting fluid from cysts or having military helicopters buzz overhead in the dead of night, There's more beneath the surface if you take a moment to reflect. For instance, gray aliens seem to have the ability to actively monitor and even enhance an abductee's health. And then, of course, there's the strange military connection lurking in the background. But it doesn't stop there. In the next chapter, I find myself unwittingly swept into a bizarre end-time cult. And just when things couldn't get more surreal, the chapter after that, I meet my hybrid son.